Hello, folks. I just wanted to ask you if you would be willing to give me a few minutes of your time as we talk about what's going on right now in our government and in our nation's future. Because I think what's happening in Washington right now is going to decide whether or not we have a nation or not at any time in the future. Now, just recently, the House of Representatives voted, purely among party lines, to have this set of procedures for impeachment of President Trump. That might not sound like a big deal, but it really, really is. And let me give you some background. The purpose of this conversation here is not to determine whether or not President Trump is guilty or innocent of the things that he's being accused of. Those of us regular citizens don't have all the information and facts that some of our leaders are privy to. On the other hand, we also don't know all the pressures that are going on behind the scenes by people who have agendas, many of whom want to destroy this nation as it has existed as a constitutional republic for over 200 years. And we're seeing that playing out before our eyes. So what I want to talk about today is not the facts of the case that they're trying to present. Those will play out, we hope, and those of you who've been following it can make up your own mind, because there is good information out there if you get beyond just the regular media, the left-wing media that's been filled with liars and cheats and dishonest left-wing people for 20-some, 40-some years now. But that's, again, not my purpose to focus on them. My purpose is to focus on what's going on right now and how it affects all of us. What we have to understand is that to this point, this effort to impeach President Trump has been multifaceted by the Democrat leadership. They tried to have one scandal after another be brought forth, and to this point everything has failed. The Mueller report and the Russian collusion thing turned out to be a complete dud, and now they've come up with this latest supposed issue with the Ukrainian president and some quid pro quo that nobody really knows about and has no evidence for at this point. But the fact of the matter is they're moving ahead with this, and they think that they have enough to try to bring this forth. Now, whether or not this is just a political stunt or it will happen to be a full-blown impeachment remains to be seen. But there is a greater issue that is being presented to us here that we must deal with. And that is, what are the individual rights of all Americans? We have guaranteed constitutional rights when it comes to being accused of crimes. There are certain rules that must be adhered in any kind of legal proceeding, any kind of arrest, court trial, prosecution, a number of those things. Now, I'm not a lawyer or a legal scholar by any means, but I do know the basics, and that's what I want to emphasize. What we have seen so far with the secret hearings by Adam Schiff's committee, the House Intelligence Committee, where no one is allowed to see what's going on except the specific committee members. No press is allowed. Not even other members of Congress are allowed in to either see or even read the transcripts of the testimony of the witnesses thus far. All of this is illegal as far as our U.S. Constitution is concerned. Now, granted, yes, some people can make the argument, well, national security requires confidential hearings. But according to those on the committee, at the beginning of every one of these hearings, Chairman Schiff has stated these are not confidential, high security issues. So there is no argument that can be made that the witnesses are testifying to things that, should they become public, could harm the United States or harm people in other countries who work for the United States. This is an effort to have a secret trial so that they can put forth the narrative they want to put forth. They will pick and choose which statements the witnesses are giving and leak them to the press and make it appear the narrative that they want to have, that somehow Trump was guilty of this. Now again, whether he is or he isn't is not my point here. My point is simply the way this is being done violates basic laws of our nation. This is far closer to what we used to see in the old Soviet Union. The communist Russian Soviet Union, the evil empire, as Ronald Reagan called it. Those of you who are younger may not remember that. I do. And those of you who are older may remember it far better than I do, even during the era of Khrushchev and others. Secret trials to eliminate political enemies were commonplace. There was no chance of anyone being acquitted once they were brought before these trials. There was no way to really defend themselves. And to this point, this is exactly what has happened in Schiff's committee. There have been no opportunities for the Republican members of the committee to call their own witnesses. And Chairman Schiff has also interfered with questioning when his own witnesses have been on the stand by the Republicans. The right of both sides to question witnesses is something that has always existed in our American government. And now when a particular witness is asked a question by the Republicans that Schiff doesn't like, he stops and tells the witness, you don't have to answer that. Now this is absurd. In a court trial that would never happen. The defense attorneys are always allowed to ask what questions they want to allow. Or want to bring forth into the trial. Yes, the prosecution can object to a particular question, and then the judge makes a ruling on it. But in this case, Schiff is serving as judge, prosecutor, and jury. There's no independent person who's deciding whether questions are legitimate or not. And again, this is the Soviet way of doing things. This is the communist way of doing things, not the American judicial system in action. Now, today, what we have seen just recently is the full House has finally taken a vote to move ahead with these impeachment procedures that are now supposed to be public. But one of the things that hasn't been fully or well reported is exactly what is in this resolution. And a couple of the things that we do know that are in there is, number one, Schiff will still be in charge of this investigation. Now this is stupid because this is the House Intelligence Committee. It is not the House Judiciary Committee. That's where impeachments typically have been run because that's the legal supervisional body in the House. But because the current chairman of the House Judicial Committee, Gerald Nadler, is incompetent, they don't trust him to do this. They want Schiff to do this, who is a former federal prosecutor, a ne'er-do-well, I guess, in that field, and that's why he went into politics. But at any rate, it will stay in his committee where it doesn't belong, first of all, but they can control it, they think, better. Second of all, he has to approve all witnesses, even if the public gets to see them. So the Republicans will be able to call witnesses if he says it's okay for them to testify. Now, once again, giving one man this much power to undo a national election where over 60 million people voted for our current president is a slap in the face of the American people. It's a slap in the face of the United States Constitution, and it cannot be allowed to stand. Now, if you think I'm presenting this to you because I'm trying to defend President Trump, that's not my primary reason for this. My primary reason for calling this out and to sound these alarm bells is because all Americans are in danger of losing our civil liberties if this is allowed to stand. If they can take away the President of the United States' due process rights in this inquiry, how much of those same kind of due process rights do you believe that any of us would have in such a case? If some political enemy or somebody has a grudge against you, or somebody who doesn't like what you believe or where you go to church or how you educate your kids decides to come after you, how are your rights going to be protected when the rights of the President of the United States aren't even being protected now by the very people who have been elected to be ensured that they are? This must be stopped. It must be challenged. Look, the vote that just happened was like 232 to 196. All the Democrats voted for this, except for two. Two Democrats voted against it, one guy in New Jersey and one guy in Minnesota, I believe. None of the Republicans voted for this. So if you live in a district with a Democrat congressman, you need to contact their office and demand that they protect support and defend the Constitution as they swore an oath of office to do so. And if they refuse to do that, then what has to happen in 2020, the national election, is every one of those 232 Democrats need to be voted out of office to save our nation and to save our lives for our families, our children, our grandchildren. If our American democracy, our constitutional republic, is to survive, this kind of tyranny is not possible in this nation. It cannot be allowed to exist and flourish. Now, how this whole impeachment nonsense will play out, I don't know. What we do see is that in my lifetime, at least, there have been two other impeachment inquiries that have happened. One was with President Nixon back in the 70s, and one was with Bill Clinton in the 90s. In both of those cases, the Democrats in the 70s had the majority in the House. In the 90s, the Republicans had the majority in the House. Both of those ruling bodies then allowed the president who was attempting to be impeached to have full due process rights, to call whatever witnesses they wanted, to always have their lawyer present, and the lawyer have the authority to call witnesses and to ask the witnesses questions. It was full legal rights for both Nixon and Clinton. This is not happening now, nor is it going to happen now with Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House. Can we as an American people, over 330 million of us, really sit back and say 230 people have the right to destroy our nation and we do nothing? Now again, I'm not saying that Trump is innocent or Trump is guilty of this. You can judge that for yourself. I'm saying that the people who are in charge of the House of Representatives right now are enemies of America. They are enemies of the Constitution, and they are you and our enemies. Now, I am not, and I repeat, I am not advocating violence, but I am advocating we use what citizen rights we still have left to oppose this. This process is illegitimate. It has been for months, and it is nothing more than the elitists and the Democrats in this nation still upset that their anointed Queen Hillary was not elected president in 2016, and they're attempting to undo that election and to stop President Trump from being reelected in 2020, mostly because the people that they are putting forth as candidates on the Democrat side are a bunch of bumbling goofballs as far as what they believe or how they comport themselves or their electability. Again, maybe you are for fans of one or more of them, I don't know, but it's a weak field. And given the good economy and the stronger military and the other good things that we've seen happen over the past few years, the chances of a Democrat winning in 2020 are very, very slight. And the people who work behind the scenes, who want to control the money and control our lives in this nation, what's been termed the swamp, have decided this is the only way that they can stop the American people from further taking back our power, the power guaranteed to us by the Constitution. And we must do that right now. We must stand in opposition to this. Again, if you have a Democrat representative, you need to contact their office, call their local office, not their Washington office, because that's far more effective. If possible, even write a handwritten letter objecting to this, demanding that the rights be recognized and upheld by them, or that you're going to vote against them in 2020. It's still early enough even for people to run against them in 2020 in their own party. If you're a conservative Democrat, I don't know if there are many of those left in this country, but if you're a conservative Democrat, maybe you should think about running against somebody who would vote to destroy our rights. But the point of the matter is we must take back our nation from these elitists, from these liars, from these cheats, from these tyrants and fascists who will not recognize the due process rights of the most powerful man in the nation, and if they don't recognize his, they certainly will step on and destroy ours whenever they feel like it. So if we want to have a nation for our lives, for our children's lives, and for our grandchildren, we must stop this now. It is illegal, it is illegitimate, and it is totally, totally un-American in how it's being presented. So thank you for listening to this. Excuse me. And please contact people that represent us in Washington to make sure that this is stopped. Spread the word to family and friends to listen to this video as well. And please stay engaged. We've got our entire civilization hanging in the balance. It's that serious and it's that important. So thank you so very much for listening, and thank you for your commitment to our nation, to our Constitution, and to the Bill of Rights that give us all God-given rights. They don't give it to us. They codify it, the God-given rights we have, so that the government has no ability to take those away from us if we don't let them. So let's make sure that doesn't happen. Again, thank you for listening.